Greetings, friends. I am Matthew Knabe, licensed professional counselor. You are listening to Experience Emerge. Today, we will dive into another conversation about the broken and fractured aspects of our lives. Then we will discuss how we put these pieces back together again to find rest and live free. C.S. Lewis once said, "Miracles are a retelling in small letters of the very same story which is written across the whole world in letters too large for some of us to see." In today's episode, we are going to explore a story in hopes to gain a little bit of perspective on those larger letters. So several months ago, when the COVID-19 shutdown surprised us all, I was introduced via email to a new friend. The original plan was to discuss this miracle story he and his wife experienced while becoming foster and then adoptive parents. But the coronavirus changed that plan and our direction for that particular discussion. Prior to the pandemic, I was put in touch with our guest on the show today from our president of Emerge Counseling Ministries, Dr. Crosby. When everything changed, we changed the direction of the interview to allow my guest to discuss what his company, Right Now Media, was providing as far as content for people who might be struggling or needing materials to help them through a very scary time in our history. Well, today we're going to circle back, and we're going to air the story about these adoption miracles. Welcome back to the show, Ben and his wife, Rebecca McLennan.
Man, thank you so much again for just giving us the opportunity to share with your audience. And we don't take it for granted. So we're very excited to be here. So we've been married for 15 and a half years. We spent a lot of that in full-time ministry, been youth pastors, kids pastors, all kinds of different things. What's that? Young adult pastors. And when we got married, one of our things was, we were married for about a year, maybe two, and we said, okay, we're gonna, want to start our family and grow our family. And we found out kind of early on we weren't able to have kids. We kept trying to have kids, and we went through 7 years of infertility. Couldn't have kids. And
all the doctors and the things.
Saw doctors, did all that, and during that time too, what's interesting about that is during that time, our friends that we had kind of grown up in ministry with, same age as us, married a few months before us, they would have not just one kid, but 2, 3, 4 kids. Family members have 4 kids during that time. And so we celebrated with them, but at the same time, walking through this kind of thing. And we had been asked in 2012.
Yeah, November of 2012, we had come back from the last doctor's appointment, and we were just kind of at this crossroads of we can go down this road of in vitro and IUI and have a very small percentage of a chance of conceiving a child biologically, or we can adopt. And that was an interesting place to be in because, neither one was certain. Either avenue and either option has nothing's guaranteed. You can even go into biological childbirth and nothing's guaranteed that way as well. But this just seems so much more of a heavy decision for us. What do we do? And so November of 2012, we were sitting here with this heavy decision to make. And just that same week, I think there was probably like 2 days after getting news back from the last doctor, we got invited to. Yeah,
one of the pastors of we were on staff with asked us to come on a television show and kind of share our ministry, our testimony, kind of what we were doing in ministry. And he had asked us, do you know anybody else? And so we had brought this couple, invited this couple to come with us. Their son was in our youth group. And so we shared our part, and then we're sitting on the side kind of, and they started sharing their testimony. They had 15 kids. They had adopted some domestically, internationally. They had this ministry where they're doing in Africa, and they had gone through, I think they had adopted initially, and then they had some kids, and they lost some babies.
As well.
Yeah. And so the wife is sitting, talking to the show, doing their part. And she looks at the camera and she says, "I believe God will allow certain influential Christian couples to experience infertility to open their heart to the orphan." And so if you're out there right now, she's pointing at the camera, if you're out there right now and you're experiencing infertility, God might be tapping on your heart to open your heart to the orphan. Well, we're backstage weeping. I mean, just like, they're not out there, they're right here.
Every word felt like it was hitting me. Like, every word was meant for us, and it just was an eye-opening experience.
Yeah, I mean, we had people say, you know, have you thought about in vitro? We'd had people say, you know, oh, you should adopt. We've never had anybody say both. You're experiencing infertility. Maybe this is, you know. And so we talked to them for like an hour afterward, and you know, in like the hallway of the studio, and she said a few things to my wife that really just was like, hit those moments.
Well, for me, coming from a woman's perspective, it definitely, infertility was very challenging. It's something that from being a child, the greatest thing I played was house. I remember stuffing pillows under my shirt, pretending to, you know, be pregnant. And I loved babies, and so this desire to be a mother was so ingrained in me and was such a part of my DNA, just as a person, that experiencing this infertility, it was just devastating. And month after month after month, year after year, and the highs and the lows. And during that whole time, I began to believe this lie that said, if God isn't allowing me to experience biological childbirth, then maybe it's because I just wouldn't be a good mother. And so I began to believe this lie, and see this as, you know, something being allowed into infertility, being something allowed into my life because it was a punishment. So in some like twisted way, I was being punished by God rather than it being a divine ordained, so you say, experience for him to open my eyes to something else. And so sitting in the backstage talking to her, I was able to just share my heart and share my fears. Like, listen, this is I know adoption is amazing, and it was one of those things that I always said, you know, one day I would love to adopt. You know, but I want biological children first, you know, just because I want to be able to know that I would be a good mother, and do I have what it takes to really love a child in such great need and give them more than they deserve, you know, so to speak. And speaking to her, and so for me, I was just in this place, and I think both of us, but more so me than Ben. Ben would say all the time, he's like, I just kind of feel like, I don't know,
we're gonna get somebody else's kids.
And he would say that sentence to me, and it would make me mad. It would make me scared. It would make me mad. It would make me scared for his family. I'm like, is something gonna happen to our family? You know, he's like, no, I just feel like there's this sense I just keep coming back to. And excuse me, and I don't know, just kind of in my mind, and granted, I think there was this stigma. There used to be this stigma of adoption. I don't think it's so much that way anymore. But a foster care adoption, growing up, it was, it's second best.
Right, it's because you're broken or something's wrong.
Not rather than it's a choice you're making to fulfill a need, to help someone in need. And so I had all of these things going through my mind.
Plus the idea too. Plus the idea too, like, we don't want to mess up like God's perfect will. Right.
So this is where I'm sitting. I don't want to mess God's will up. I don't biologically. Like, the only way we can go, and if we can't go that route, should I adopt? I don't know. It just seemed like such a bigger, weightier thing to make the choice to adopt, because it was like
you're forcing God's hand.
I felt like I was forcing God's hand rather than being in partnership with him. And this conversation with this woman, it was just divine. It opened my eyes. It was right time, and I realized all of these things I'd been thinking and feeling were all lies. They weren't not the heart of God. Most of the things I was thinking and feeling were out of fear, and I spent years believing fear. And she said something to me that was eye-opening. She said, let's say it is God's will. It isn't his plan for you to have biological children, but let's imagine that it's not for 5 more years. Playing devil's advocate with me for a little bit. Do you really want your arms to be empty for 5 more years? And no, absolutely
couldn't get out
not.
fast enough.
Fast enough. No, and she said, well, maybe God's allowing you to go through this to open your eyes to the orphan, and that there are children in your city, in your state, in this world, that are in need of a mother and a father right now. And here you are, a mama and a daddy, ready for children. And so it was in that moment.
She said the other thing she said, I know your concern might be that if you get to heaven, she said, when I get to heaven and I'm standing in front of God and he asked me, you know, and I'm wondering, did I do well? Did I do the right thing? Did I follow your plan? I don't think he's going to look at the trail of children behind me that are entering his kingdom as well and say, you missed my plan.
Very good. Yeah.
And she said, you know, what is James 1:27? Pure religion is true and faultless is look after the widows and orphans in need, you know, and so that
was freeing to me. In that moment, I realized, it's not that complicated to follow the Lord. Sometimes we're waiting for this great big, you know, impression in our heart or the writing on the wall. And sometimes we can choose to partner with him and just follow what's already in his word. And in that moment, we realized we're ready for kids. And there's kids right now who need a mom and a dad, whether that be temporary through foster care, you know, foster placement, or we go down the route of domestic adoption. We didn't know what that looked like, but we realized in that moment we were ready to start a family.
So that was November. By December, we had done like a interest meeting. We'd gone to like an orientation. By June for foster care. What we had been mentors in foster care earlier in Arizona, and we had done some raised awareness, and the state of Arizona had gone from like 13,000 to like 16,000 kids in foster care within 6 months. And so we're like, man, there's kids in our backyard that we want to help.
Yeah.
And so by June, we were licensed foster parents, and then they called us and said, hey, we had gotten calls for kids and said yes, and nothing happened. And, you know, in the system, and they called us and said, hey, we have a 11-month-old boy. Would you want to be placed with him? I'm like, yep, sure. You know, and 2 hours later, like, hey, we're on our way. So they showed up with this little 11-month-old boy with his, you know, onesie was on backwards. He was dirty and disheveled. We didn't know it, but now knowing him, he was scared, you know, and just, and they dropped him off and they said, oh, by the way, he's got a 5-year-old sister. And so within 3 weeks, she was with us, and they said, oh, and the bio mom's pregnant. And so 4 months later, we had another baby. So
Sorry, go.
So we had, you know, 0 to 3 and 5 months.
Well, and during foster care, I was so afraid. I didn't know what I would be able to do, what my capabilities, what my limits were as a human being, as a mother. And so we had said, we just want a baby. Like, let's just try to keep this as naturally as possible. Just give us
let us work our way into parenting.
Let's work our way. Let's get our feet wet in parenting. You know, our hearts were willing to be a help more.
Well, we even got licensed for siblings because they said that's one of the biggest things is siblings get split up. And so we got licensed for 2.
So our heart was to be able to keep kids together, but we thought, let's just get started with 1, you know? And we said, you know, we just would like to have a child under 2. And our licensing agency was so great. They said, that's great. We'll license you for a sibling set, and you're licensed up to 6 years old, but we'll put in your preferences for, you know,
under
0 to under 2 years old, but we just ask that you keep your hearts open.
And it's a faith-based agency, so that was really, really key. Just so that I honestly, I don't know how people do foster care without the Lord. Like I don't know. There's you lean on the Holy Spirit and on God so much. But anyway.
So she said, I just ask that you keep your hearts open to see what the Lord would do. And I remember telling myself, okay, absolutely. But inside going, nope, I'm gonna do what I'm comfortable with, and this is what I'm comfortable with. And the whole time I just kind of had this feeling that the Lord was gonna ask more of me because I was capable of more. But my fear was limiting me. And until you get a child in your home, it's just the label foster child. And then whatever the whole your understanding, the stigma of foster
what
care
you've seen in movies or what
your
experience, story somebody told you. Yeah.
All these things. It's just this. I had so much fear. Not everybody is like me. A lot of people come into this willingly. Not willing. I was willing as well, but it's a dream that they've always wanted to do. For me, I was just so fearful, and I didn't think I was capable of so much. And we're sitting there. We have the baby, Braxton, and I realized, oh man! And in an instant, my heart grew.
Yeah.
And the caseworker said she's got a 5-year-old sister, and we just found out mom's pregnant. And immediately,
Yep.
forget every fear I had. We can't keep these kids separate.
Yeah.
We have to keep them together.
Yeah. Wow.
We'll figure it out later. It's just, in that moment, my heart grew 100 times. My fear went out the window, because here's this person. It wasn't a label. It wasn't foster child. It was Braxton. And I could see his face, and I could hold him, and I could see the need. And in that moment, I just felt like, who am I to say I can't? If God is asking me and is with me, and every step of the way, it was just from the beginning, from the moment I said, yep, okay, let's do foster care. I always wondered, am I doing the right thing? And it was just one step after the other. And in the moment of seeing these kids, it wasn't about me. It wasn't about Ben. It was about these kids. It wasn't about my fears. It was about how do we help them?
Yeah.
And if they're in our home for a week, if they're in our home for months, if they're here permanently, how do we help them? And it in that moment,
so amazing.
It was wild to see those fears. I mean, not disappear. They're still there. I mean, they were there then, and you still have fears as a parent. And am I capable? Can I love them? Can I guide them, as well as they deserve? I don't think that ever goes away. But I learned to move through the fear. I realized God was with me in a deeper and greater way than I had previously.
So we ended up getting them, and then we didn't know if they would, become, if we would adopt them.
Our children's case plan was very unique. They were in foster care for a year previous, and they came to us as an emergency removal from a horrible kinship placement. So our situation was a little bit unique. They were already moving to
adoption.
They were already moving to adoption 3 weeks after we'd been placed with Braxton. So our case plan kind of moved kind of quickly. These kiddos were already in need of a permanent placement.
Yeah.
And so that's how we family moved.
We ended up adopting them about a year later, in 2014. And then we felt the Lord, like almost right after we adopted them, we felt the Lord speaking to us, like, we need to open our home to foster care again. Like, we're going to do it again. And it was kind of crazy, but then we found out their bio mom was pregnant again. She had married another dad, and she'd had a baby. And within our heart, we just said, man, God, if there's ever an opportunity for us to keep them all together, we would love to do that.
In our heart is for the biological family, and it is always better for the child to
stay with mom or dad or both.
With the biological family. But if that just can't happen, our heart was, let's keep these kids together.
Yeah.
And so we knew the mom, we knew her circumstances. She's just in a place where she's hurting.
Yeah.
It's hard for her. And so we knew that the likelihood of this baby.
And we keep a relationship with her. I mean, we'll keep in contact with her just to keep her updated on how the kids are doing.
So we knew the likelihood of this child coming into care was probably pretty great. And so always in the back of our mind, how do we keep these kids together? And our prayer was, Lord, if this baby ever comes into care, please make her way to us. Yeah. And that was my prayer for 2 years.
So we adopt them. We end up moving from Arizona to Texas. We had a lot of our friends have gotten into foster care because of our story, and we'd get updates from people saying, hey, we're fostering this baby. We've got this going on. And some friends of ours that were the worship pastors at our church, some of our best friends, we actually sat in their living room and walked them through foster care, and they told us their story. They had a son who's 12 now, but they had a son, and we're looking to grow our family and help parents. And well, they call us like a year later in May, and they said, hey, we've been placed with a little girl. She's amazing. You guys got to meet her, whatever. Well, they call us 2 weeks later, text us 2 weeks later, and they said, what? I think we might have your kids.
Well, they asked us what, about our biological kids, about our children's biological mother.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I realized, oh my word, they
have our kids' sister.
My God.
So the mom had married the dad, moved to New York, moved back to Arizona without anybody knowing, and the baby girl had been placed into foster care. And out of 20,000 kids in Arizona foster care, she was placed with our best friends.
That's insane.
Yeah, it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. And so now we're going, okay, how do we keep the kids together? And we went through, honestly, and we've talked to our friends about this, we even just recently, we went through kind of this dynamic because they were in this place of, when you get in foster care, if the child isn't going to stay with, if the child's not going to be able to stay with its parents, biological parents, family's the next option, right? Well, in their minds, our friends' minds, they went, family is our friends that we sat down with us in our living room to get us into foster care. We're good. We're going to adopt her because she's going to be, our the family is sat with us and asked us, and they walked us through this. And in our mind, we went, she's with you so she can be with her siblings.
Right.
And so for a year, about 10 months, there was this kind of rub with our best friends. And I remember sitting in and going, God, you've set us up for failure because our best friends, we're going to crush their dreams by wanting to reunite these kids. Right. And there was the redemption that happened about 10 months later where they, God just really worked on them. And we had these conversations where they sat down with us and they said, hey, listen, we know for you that, and my buddy told me just like this week, he said, every time we wanted to keep her, it was out of a selfish desire for us. It wasn't thinking of her.
Yeah.
And they sat down with us and they said, we know that if you adopt her and if the bio mom has another baby, you keep all the siblings together and they can't stay, that you'll continue to foster and adopt those kids. Whereas for us, we feel like this would be it for our family. Mm. And so she ended up coming. What's crazy is we sat down in the courthouse, on when they were moving to adoption, and the judge was saying, I've never experienced this where we have two good families. We have a family that has the siblings and we have a family that's been the foster parents for 10 months. That's an amazing family. Mm-hmm. It's so hard to decide. And they asked, and one of the lawyers said, well, can the foster parents, current placement, our friends, say something? So she stands in court, our friend stands in court, and she says, Judge, we love this family. Mind you, it's the same judge that had our 3 older kids 3 years earlier, same judge. Wow. And she gets up in court and she says, Judge, we love this little girl. She's amazing. We would love to adopt her. We think she's unbelievable, but we've known the siblings since they came to be with their parents. We've known them for 15 years. These are our best friends. And we want her to be able to be with her siblings. And the judge threw her hands up. It's like, wait, what?
Literally threw her hands up.
Oh my God.
She's like, do you know each other? Well, then move her. This is, it can't be bad. And these now are our best friends. I mean, we spend Easter together. We come on the weekends, when COVID's not going on.
We would lose our friends. Our relationship is so much stronger.
They're our kids' aunt and uncle.
And our daughter, Blake, has not lost anybody. I mean, she has her aunt and her uncle, and she has her brother, and what that whole experience has done in that family. They've now launched a nonprofit that buys brand new shoes for foster children through the heart of their son. And that's just the beginning for them. But just to kind of see how God has been in this whole story and just kind of woven.
I mean, it's unbelievable. And since that time, we've actually adopted a fifth sibling. So they have another sister that we adopted in May. She came to be with us, and we have a sixth that's from a different biological parent. So we have six, and
5 of them are siblings.
5 are siblings.
So of the 6 kids, are all of them, have they all been adopted at this point?
Yes.
You guys have gone through that whole process with all of them.
Yeah.
Now
Wow.
my house is full.
Yeah. I was just going to say. I was going to say. Yeah. I mean, is the Lord working on your hearts, or are we?
So we sit down. We said, okay, May of this year, end of May, we adopted the babies on the same day, and like a week or so later, we've talked about like, okay, we're good. We only have a 4-bedroom house. We have 8 people.
We can't even.
But my wife goes on a jog, and she has her time with the Lord on her jog, and she comes back from her jog, and she says, I was just talking to the Lord, and I said, Lord, if you want us to take another baby, I'm willing, but you're going to have to help. And I said, you told the Lord what?
I just felt so prompted.
I said, you talk to me before you talk to the Lord.
I had gone through my mind, and years prior when we got the older three, I told Ben, I said, I just don't know, how do I ever say no? And I know there will come a day where wisdom will speak and say, we're done. Like, and now we're in this phase of life, a year away from 40, we're realizing, man, okay, I think the time that we have on this earth, you start to evaluate it differently. And I realized, okay, now we have all these kids. How old am I going to be when the babies are in high school? And so just that kind of just plays in my mind, and we're planning that way. And so I'm definitely more cognizant of.
But at the same time, that couple that we did the show with, that has, I think they're up to like 16 or 17 now. I mean, kids, yeah. I mean, they're grown and out of the house, and one of them's like a special forces, and another one's like started, I mean, but I look at them and go,
our examples, our heroes, are continually doing this. And so anyway, in my mind, I thought, then I just don't know how all these years of experiencing infertility and just praying and praying and praying that the Lord would would grow our family. How do I ever tell him, okay, enough?
Yeah.
And so that's just kind of been in my
heart. And that's
our
story. That's not everybody's story, but that's what we feel. Yeah.
And I know there was a time, many days, I go, enough.
I would imagine.
I feel like emotionally, my capabilities, I'm full. And I think we might be done. But I just always wanted to leave an open door to the Lord. If you need us to, I just want you to know I'm willing. But I don't know that I'm able right now. But I am willing. And whether that's respite care, whether that I would love to still have a hand in foster care, and whether that's just telling our story over and over and over again.
Or helping others.
Yeah. I just definitely just always want to have a hand in this world, because it's changed our life. There's such a need for these kiddos to have safe homes. The foster families who have been placements for 30 children, 50 children, are my heroes. Being able to walk through this season of hopelessness for these kids and be able to be a part of healing for them, and then be able to reunify with their biological family or to find a forever placement, they're my heroes. Yeah. They're the people doing amazing work. And so I just want to always be a part of that world. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why I just so badly want to do respite care at some point. But
I think honestly, we know, like, we're in our purpose. It's part of our calling. Just that, I mean, we've spent so many nights on the phone with couples that we've never met that found us some way, and that we're just sit down and walk them through.
Just to be a shoulder for someone, or just
answer questions.
Be another voice of encouragement that you are on the right road. You've already been thinking about this.
Your fears are valid.
Your fears are valid. Yeah. They're not going to go away. Finding the greater purpose in it, to be able to move through the fear, is what it's about. And I think for us, this experience of infertility really was a scenario to open our hearts to orphan. Because we realized we weren't victims.
It wasn't a curse; it was a blessing.
Yeah. It really was a pivoting point in our lives. Change the trajectory. That's a hard word. Change the trajectory of our life.
Nice.
Yeah. I think, Ben, you and I talked a little bit last time, and my wife and I, we went through a long season of infertility and miscarriage, and there's a stigma that goes along with it that I think for her and I, we've gotten to the point where we've been able to be open and talk about it. But it's interesting to me that it's something that is it's difficult to talk about. And a lot of people, there's not a lot of resources for it. But then more and more, we've been able to talk about our journey, and then going through IVF and everything. All of a sudden, all of these people start coming out of the woodwork, and everybody's
community.
Late.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where were you guys before? You know?
Wait a minute. How come nobody was talking about this before?
Exactly.
You feel so alone
and isolated.
Infertility is just so crippling, because you think procreation is such a fundamental human.
That's what you're created to do.
You're supposed to be able to do that. Yeah. And when the body's just not working in that way, it's such a personal failure, and it just hits you at your core.
Well, and it's like it's a monthly thing.
It's just it's a monthly reminder.
Yeah.
Yep. It's very difficult. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about, because Ben, you and I had, I think you were on the 5th episode of our podcast that we launched this year. So the intent was that you and I were going to talk about that story. And then lo and behold, a week later, the entire world flips upside down and this COVID thing hits that we had no idea anything about. And we decided to have a conversation regarding about right now media and what was going on in the world, because we were in the beginning of a pandemic that nobody knew any information. You guys were launching a bunch of information. But then
15 days to slow the spread.
Right. Yeah. 15 days and we'll flatten the curve. We're going to flatten the curve in 15 days. So during that podcast, you and I kind of teased the story that you guys just shared. And then, prior to us starting recording today, we were kind of laughing, going, we were planning on doing another episode, not expecting to still be in the same position we were back then, which was months ago. But I wanted to talk to you guys on a level as parents about a little bit about parenting during this time, some of the challenges, some of the things that you've experienced and noticed. And then if you're okay, talking a little bit about what your experiences will be with this going back to school season that so many parents, as a mental health professional, that's a daily conversation with my clients and families and stuff. And maybe just share a little bit about some of your thoughts and what that looks like for your family.
Yeah, I mean, it's been difficult for sure. I think, you think that, we're going to go through this, we're going to just we're going to go a month, maybe it's going to be 6 weeks. And then now we're, 5 months into it. It's been difficult to walk through. I think for the kids they're better than we are as parents.
Mm-hmm.
They're more resilient. I think, it's definitely helped a lot it's summer, because, especially here in Arizona, summer's so hot, you don't go out anyway, 118 degrees. So I think that's helped a lot.
That's also been a challenge, is we can't send the kids outside to go play and let off steam. So everybody's inside all day.
Yeah.
It's been hard. And I think, well, for me as a mom, I always feel like I need to be on for the kids.
Mm.
And I got to be positive and the cheerleader, and it's okay, and listen to everybody's feelings and help not to say that Dad doesn't do that, because he's great at that. But I think just as the moms carry a different weight, sometimes very unrealistic expectation of things, but we do. And in the beginning, I was like, okay, I got this. We can do this. I'm going to stay up and be positive. We're going to be all right. It's going to be no big deal. And come July, I feel like personally this last month has hit me harder than the months prior. And I think it's just, for me, it's this mental game. The kids don't go outside. They're kind of sheltered from it. We keep the news off. In the beginning, it was this whole world of everything's different. And now they've gotten used to the idea. Okay, I understand. And they talk about all the time, well, when the virus is gone, can we go do this? When the virus is done, can we go do this? And it's, yes. And they're, we do our best to, where they can hear, safe, optimistic, and positive, and think about, what are we going to do when this is done? When we go back to normal, let's go to Disney World. Let's plan this. Let's plan, give them something to hope for, expectations past this. But for me as the mom, this month has been so hard for me mentally and emotionally. And I think because for me, it's been so long. And when are we going to go through this? And I think we all ended the school year going, okay, we're ending this way, but we're going to be back to normal by the time school starts. Yeah. And here we are by the time school starts, and it just seems even worse in some ways than it did back in the beginning. And so for me personally, I find myself excusing myself to my room a lot more to be able to just take a breath, or to go do some yoga, or to be able to just go spin on a bike, cycle for a little bit. It's definitely been challenging, and I've realized it's not a sprint. And I think at the beginning I tried to sprint through this and just get it done, get it over with. And it's a marathon, this whole
Yeah.
lockdown
I
thing.
think too, giving ourselves and our kids permission to
feel what you feel.
Yeah, to talk. I mean, we can express how they feel.
And to listen. And there's a book that Ben and I we've never finished it, but we've definitely listened to a big chunk of it. How to talk so your kids will listen, and how to listen so your kids will talk. Maybe it's the other way around. But anyway, that book was so good for us because Ben and I are both firstborn. Mm-hmm. He's a pastor's child. I'm a military child. So we're both pretty type A, and we like to tell people, no, this is how you do it. So we like to talk a lot and tell you how you need to do things. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of how we interact and went into parenting and the first couple of years of parenting. And the last few, we've really had to take a step back and realize, man, we need to listen more. Mm-hmm. And so that was a journey we've been on already, but this whole COVID experience has really taught us, man, we got to listen extra. We've got to stop, really hear what they're saying. The temper tantrums, which are every 5 minutes, it's wild, Yeah. And they seem stronger and louder because our kids are just carrying all these emotions, and they don't know what to do with it. There's no normal, and it's hard to remember that sometimes as a parent, because when I'm feeling exhausted and I'm feeling emotionally drained by all this and feeling like, is the world ever going to go back to normal? Mm-hmm. My kid is feeling that, but doesn't have the words to be able to explain.
It doesn't know why they feel that way. They just know they can't go to the grocery store with us like they used to. They can't go, into Target or Costco,
And so as a parent, sometimes I'll catch myself like, oh, so frustrated, and then I stop and realize, wow, okay, they're feeling it, and being able to ask them, what do you need? That's something I've learned, just to ask, what do you need? To be able to see that anger, to know that anger.
She wrote it down.
I have Post-it notes everywhere. Anger is an unmet need. So when my child is throwing a fit and throwing things and screaming at his brother or sister, there's anger there. There's an unmet need. What's going on? Do you need a hug? Do you need to talk it out? Do you need a journal? What's going on, buddy? What do you need? Yeah. And that's something that we've been practicing more and more as a family, being more intentional about extending more grace.
Yeah. To ourselves and to our kids.
And that's something I have not been very good at. Extending grace to myself in the past, like, oh, my expectations are high for myself, and I better not fail. But realizing that we're all in an impossible situation here, and you're gonna have moments where you crumble. But to extend grace to yourself and know that you can start again. The power of the restart is amazing. We restart all the time. Yeah. Like, okay, buddy, why don't you just go sit on your bed and just take a deep breath and come back when you're able to, be good. When you're good, when you feel good inside, when you feel like you can be around us all or be with one another. It's challenging for sure. In the beginning, it didn't feel as bad because we're unique. We're in Arizona. It's 120 degrees outside. You can't send the kids outside to play. It's not safe. Right. But in the beginning, we could send them outside. They could run around. Now they're cooped up inside, and it's just all this physical stuff they got to get out. And so it definitely has its challenges.
Yeah. Yeah. What are your thoughts about this back to school season? How are you guys handling it? And what are your thoughts?
I mean,
it feels impossible. It feels like no matter what, I'm going to make the wrong decision. It's the weight I feel, don't you?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll be judged for whatever decision I make, one way or the other. Yeah. So there's pressure with that.
And everybody, I know it's not, but it feels like everybody has an opinion, and that opinion is very loud, and they're right. Right.
But every opinion there's pros and cons to either decision.
And the thing is too, like we were talking about it, like every school's different, every district's different, mm-hmm. So it's like, who's right, who's wrong, which experts are you listening to today or this hour that had a different opinion from the last one?
Right.
And so, and we're having a conversation today with a buddy of mine that he was saying, I don't know if he has a daughter, one daughter, and he said, I don't know if I'm going to let her go back till she doesn't wear a mask. And I'm like, I can't do that. Like
we're in a different, realizing that every family is in a different circumstance.
Based on, I have 4 kids that would go back to school. That means I'm going to get a lot more work done. I'm blessed that I get to work from home, but I got to be able to work. So if they do go back to school, which they're all starting online here, with they go to a charter school here in Arizona. So they're going to start online for 3 weeks and then go back to school right now. That's the plan right now. Who knows what the plan will be
exactly
a week from now. And so, I think just, everybody's kind of got to make their decision.
What's best for your family?
And that's something that we've talked about, even when we went through the foster care and adoption process and everything we did. You got to give yourself the grace to go, I'm going to make the best decision I know with the information that's given to me.
Yeah.
You take in as much information as you can, make the best decision you can in that moment. And a lot of families have, they have people who are that have health issues that they can't, maybe, that, yeah.
Exactly.
And so I think walking through that, I mean, we have, it was interesting too with COVID. It started out, not everybody this way, but it started out with that thing out there that somebody who knows somebody had.
That's right.
And then it quickly became, okay,
I know so many people.
My old boss had it, and then my old pastor has it.
Right in your back, it's right there.
And then it's like, and then you have people, and you're constantly wondering, well, did I already have it? I don't know. I remember I couldn't,
That's right.
I remember back in January, I couldn't breathe very well. Was it here? We're at Disney World and Christmas. So did we get it? That and so you have to just, I think you've got to make the best decision with the information you have in front of you.
Yeah.
And give yourself the grace to make mistakes, you know.
I think one of the things that we've been doing as therapists and talking to people is, we can't make blanket statements for everybody because everybody's in a different situation. And I think that we've got to be careful about our judgment on other people for making decisions what's right for their family. I think that's one of the bigger things in the message that we're trying to get out. And we're actually at Emerge, we're going to be doing a town hall type of meeting for parents with administrators and principals to be able to have a dialogue so that parents could come and ask questions and get better data to make the decisions that they need to make from their families. But the thing I want to encourage people is let's not bring judgment to other people for whatever they're choosing to do based on their family's needs. I think that's one of the big things. And so Ben and Bex, I wanted to give you one more opportunity and then we'll wrap up with this. But Ben, you and I in our last podcast, you shot me a video of your daughter. And we played a piece of it on the podcast or whatever, but then fast forward a couple months later and all of a sudden it's everywhere. So just tell me real quick about how that happened and what is happening with that video now.
Yeah, it's so crazy. So it's my daughter Blake, which is actually the little girl that our friends fostered. So the fact that she did it in our life is unbelievable. Yeah, so we recorded it back in March. We told the kids it was when spring break and they weren't going to go back to school, so we kind of walked them through.
We held off on telling the kids as long as we could. And then Sunday night before they were supposed to go back to Monday, I guess we're going to tell them they're not going back to school.
And we posted it online. It got a couple views. I mean, it got like 10,000 views on Facebook, which was substantial. But we had a friend of ours that was part of an Instagram called Soul Pancake. It's like Rainn Wilson, the Dwight from The Office, is the guy who runs it. Mm-hmm. And the next day after I posted it, producer, she said, hey, could we use it? I said, sure. They didn't end up using it, didn't do anything with it until the first Monday in July. And she posted it and it just went crazy. I mean, it was Michelle Pfeiffer and, all these, J-Lo and Jennifer Aniston and, all these. And then it just it got like 10 million views on Facebook.
People in Africa and Australia,
the UK.
I'm like, oh my word,
and literally, she feels is how I feel. Like she's put into words how I feel.
Well, when we told the kids in March, and their world completely changed. As an adult, you go, well, I can still go out. I mean, it's scary out there, but I can still go out. There's still some level of normalcy. But the children, everything stopped, and so.
By the time we were 3 months into it, everybody felt the way she felt.
In the month of July, I feel like how she felt in March.
Yeah. And so it's been incredible. I mean, through this story, we've been able to share our story with, we did an interview with a local station in Cleveland. We did three of the local stations here in Arizona. We did some national things. We still have some more things coming up. and coming up that we'll be able to do some interviews with. And what's the favorite thing for us is because of Blake's story through adoption, we've been able to share that. And we've had people reach out to us and say, I thought about foster care, but I never really, knew if I could do it. And, reading your story or reading your blog or reading, following you on Instagram or whatever that is. We have people that, they were adopted, they went through foster care. We've been able to, message with people and even talk to people and say, hey, here's some of the misconceptions of foster care. And so our hope is that,
just to be another voice advocating for the kiddos in foster care.
Yeah.
There's so many great voices out there doing amazing work for these kids. And the fact that through this viral video, we can be another voice to,
and even just maybe even point to those ministries or those people that say, hey, here's what they're doing.
It's been really cool. It's
been amazing
viral experience.
Like there's one, we found out about one that there's a nonprofit that they help raise money for people who are doing domestic private adoption. That's all they do. And so like, how can we find there? And they're looking for couples, like they're looking for families to say, hey, are you doing private adoption? Want to help you raise money? Like, how can we pair those together? I mean, just that aspect of things. So, yeah.
Your guys' story is absolutely incredible. And I really appreciate both of your guys' hearts in this. And Ben, I noticed a couple times that you even got emotional today, and you can just tell that this is such a just a massive undertaking. It's not something that is just like, yeah, let's just do this lightly and this will be easy and
right.
You know what I mean? And so I just appreciate it. I have such a heart for adoption and fostering and my nephew, and I can share our stories with you guys at some point when we get together, maybe someday when we come out to Arizona after all this stuff is past us. But I appreciate you guys' time. Is there anything else you guys would like to share today before we go?
I think one thing that we say that I would encourage anybody listening is that, and you kind of hinted to it, that we say as a family, redemption is messy. So, when you're a part of, whether that's through foster care, adoption, or just your personal story, my redemption as who I am as a man and who I am as a husband and what we've walked through, it's messy, but it's beautiful.
And I this whole experience where we're at our story with our kids at this point, and this whole viral video with Blake, I've contemplated a lot on, wow, this is an amazing thing we're living. But in the moment, looking back, it looks amazing. I'm living in it now, and I look back and I go, this is an amazing story. But before I got here, I didn't know what we were doing. Mm-hmm. And I just followed my heart one step at a time. And so my encouragement would be to people, if you're sitting in a position where you don't know what step to take next, or you have an inkling of something you want to do, or you have a heart for something but you're afraid, my encouragement would be just follow that inclination, listen to the voice, follow the promptings, and just step out in faith, afraid or not. Step out and see what will unfold. One step at a time.
One step at a time. I think that's the thing that we think sometimes. We think that if I go to a foster care meeting, that I'm signing up on the dotted line by walking in the door, or that I've committed and I can't go back. No, you can just find out, what that next step is. Just like go to for us, we went to an interest meeting, an orientation. We didn't sign up to be foster parents. That we went through 6 months of classes and filled out paperwork, and so. We just felt like each step, take that next step, and then, and I think,
not afraid anyway.
Yeah. It's not, the fear doesn't go away. You just kind of step out.
And step out they did. What an uplifting story during a time when we need to be inspired. I had such a great time with Ben and Bex on this call. I look forward to meeting them in person one day. I know we are going to make that happen. Until then, we're going to get a Zoom call together and get him and his wife, along with me and my wife, on together and get to know each other even better. I'm really looking forward to continuing that relationship. To be able to have the faith that the McLennans had during this time is truly inspiring. I hope it has affected you today. There is such need in this world for fostering and adoption. If you feel God tugging on you, lean into it. Thanks, Ben and Bex. And thank you for listening. Please find us on all the social media outlets at Emerge Counseling Ministries. Well, until next time, or when our Savior comes, God bless.